Hey everyone, welcome back. What is up? I finally grabbed the Kuva Hek, but not one, two of them. Yes, once again I picked up two of these. Which elements, you may ask? Heat and Toxin. The Toxin one is 60% and the Heat one is 46.6%. Kuva Liches feels so much grindier to me still, so I had enough. Besides, I have 5 builds to show you today. Now let's take a closer look at this weapon. Compared to the Hek and even the Vapor Hek, a lot of things have changed. The first is an all-round improvement in nearly all stats. The Kuva variant has much better fall-off, higher crit stats, status chance, and damage. Well, actually the net crit chance is 2% lower, but the crit damage evens it out. The reload has also been cut down to 1.9 seconds, but the one drawback is the magazine has been cut down to 4, and the fire rate reduced to 2.17. Being a single target gun, the fire rate nerf isn't immediately noticeable, but it does become problematic when we swap the newly buffed critical deceleration. Arcane Tempo is a highly recommended arcane to run with this, unless you're going for an Altfire setup. Wait, an Altfire setup? Yes, so actually, the Kuva Hek can shoot all 4 barrels at once in one go, which is probably why the magazine size was cut down to 4. This is pretty handy for dealing with heavier units, but honestly, most of the time, you won't be using this mode that much unless you're specifically building for it. There's a weird quirk for it. Normally when you finish a magazine, there's a delay before the weapon auto-reloads. You can skip this by pressing reload manually as soon as the magazine empties. The Altfire instead has a forced unskippable delay before the weapon reloads, so no matter what, it will still feel a bit slow. This means you should only really be using it for harder targets, or because you're, say, hunting Eidolons or Demolysts. Otherwise, it gets unwieldy for regular use. Another interesting decision DE made was disallowing the Scattered Justice mod to be used on Kuva Hek. As much as people say that's a bad thing, honestly, with the amount of damage this weapon outputs, that's a trivial matter and probably better that way to not invalidate the other Heks. Because, well, it's gonna have trash dispo for quite a while. Overall, the Kuva Hek is just a straight upgrade compared to the rest of the family, but not as much as the Tenet Tetra was to the rest of its family. Also, Galvanized Multishot has somewhat nullified the massive benefits Scattered Justice once offered. So let's take a look at the builds today, starting with the Toxin Kuva Hek first. This is your generic raw corrosive build intended to just delete whatever you shoot at. It's strong enough to take on generic steel path enemies, just keep in mind you won't reliably one-shot heavy units until you have fully stacked galvanized hell. Sometimes you may need to shoot twice, but when you do, Galvanized Savvy will kick in and make that second shot much stronger. Since you have massive corrosive weight, you will have procs on corrosive, as well as the likely puncture or maybe impact or slash, granting you an additional 160 to 240% base damage on your second shot and a lot of armor. Strip. Also, I am having polarity problems, but if you slap another form and you can run primed charged shell for even more damage. This is your general purpose Kuva Hek when you just want to blast and not care. There is no bane on this build, making it very low maintenance. With how you can hop around in Warframe, I've decided to incorporate modus setup into this build. If you don't like it, you can run either a Bane if you want to specialize it further, or Shotgun Spaz if you don't want to run Arcane Tempo. We're taking advantage of the critical deceleration buff because it is now 200% critical chance. Combining modus setup and critical deceleration together gives us 96.6% critical chance alongside primed Ravage on the Kuva Hek, which is unheard of for the Hek family, and a lot of status to proc Corrosive. Seeking Force is handy for sniping down hallways and getting the most kills per shot from the hordes, as a magazine size of just 4 can hurt. Prime Tactical Pump and Prime Merciless together push our reload all the way down to 0.8 seconds, making it much more comfortable to use while also offering a massive amount of base damage with 360% when actively using it, and the reason we have completely removed Prime Point Blank from the build. The Exec is currently taken up by Galvanized Acceleration, which extends our fall off to 28.5 to 57 meters once fully stacked. Though you may want to consider Narrow Barrel because it reduces the spread of the weapon if you're thinking on using the Altfire more, as the Altfire has much more spread than the single shot mode and also slightly worse percentage fall off, so Narrow Barrel is nice in a pinch. Let's test this out. I'm spawning Drakkar Manic Bombards today because the sheer strength of this gun makes it overkill in most circumstances and just completely destroys corrupted heavy gunners. At nearly 1000 base damage per shot with a full bonus, the Altfire has just under 4000 base damage, so you can only imagine what that would look like. Now let's shoot them first to stack up on Galvanized Hell and Primary Merciless a bit. You can see at first it has a little bit of difficulty killing them, but as you start lining up the bodies, which should be easy since fodder exists in missions and not everything is a super powered heavy, you see the true power of the Kuva Hek unfold. And I still haven't max stacked my Merciless Arcane. Reloading is super quick as well. Basically, the single shot with max stacks becomes even stronger than the Altfire at 0 merciless stacks, so this is definitely a beast of a weapon and good for punching through crowds. But once again, it is just a single target weapon with punch through, meaning it will be hard to find its place in the current meta, and with its overwhelming damage, a lot of the time people would rather just give up this damage for an AoE option instead. But if you want something that hits hard and fast and don't mind slapping things down one at a time, this definitely works for your standard steel path. I would strongly recommend keeping Prime Tactical Pump and running Arcane Tempo for the best experience. The second build today plays off pure Toxin. This is meant to deal with Corpus enemies instead, and all that's changed is swapping out Prime Charge Shell for Contagious Spread. There literally is nothing that differs in the playstyle, and Reload and Arcanes are even the same. So let's just skip right to the testing. I don't have proper Corpus enemies with high HP but without armor, so let's just spawn these. As you can see, at first I can still cut past the shields, but the damage is a little bit lacking since I'm facing armor. Though once again my stacks build up and now I'm able to one-shot these Corpuses again, so this is all you really have to change if you want to take them on. The third build is your Sweaty Endurance build. This is a viral Hunter Munitions setup when you really need that long-lasting damage. Nothing special is required on this build, just a point and shoot. We've dropped Galvanized Savvy since we're aiming to kill things down with successive slash procs rather than raw damage. I have opted for a primed cleanse instead since this is a literal min-max build. Our viral is sourced from chilling reload this time instead of primed tactical pump, so the reload has increased from 0.8 to 1.1 seconds, but we've managed to save a slot for Hunter Munitions. This is a self-sustaining build that doesn't need a primer. You can go for it if you want though, but there is no Galvanized Savvy on the build and the only benefit will be getting 10 viral procs sooner. Instead, I'm relying on the massive raw damage and crits to fuel into the slash DOTs over multiple shots. Even just one viral proc is already enough to double your damage, and this will definitely make a dent, so let's try this out. Well, you can see this thing can even kill without any galvanized or merciless stacks and will only get stronger over time as you kill more. The trade-off is our raw damage is poor against armor and everything dies due to slash takes instead. That said, the damage ceiling on this build is much higher than the Corrosive or Toxin build. Every setup has its own place, and this is not what I would run on your everyday mission. This is more reserved for endurance level cap or disruption due to massive firepower available. Once my stacks are fully gained, which you can easily get against fodder in the mission, these bombards actually can't even live the raw damage shot for us to see, slash, and that's before we even bring damage buffs like roar into play. Say you take Demolysts, you could even use the Altfire for an all-in-one shot for slash ticks 24 times larger than shown here, or easily into the multi-millions. With roar, it should pass 10 million slash DOT. But now comes another question. Viral Hunter Munitions is more than good enough for normal endurance, but what if we want the best of the best for endurance, say for disruption where you have a heavy target? Well, here's some food for thought. Do you think base 13.3% status is good enough on a pellet shotgun for heat inherent memes? Let me tell you, it definitely is. And this is the first build on my heat Kuva Hek we'll be looking at. The same staple mods are here, except we managed to drop Hunter Munitions since damage is from heat instead of slash. This means we're going to slot Galvanized Savvy, which is perfect because heat inherent setups use a primer anyways. Because this is specifically for Demolists, we also don't need punch through anymore, so I've dropped Seeking Force for Incendiary Coat for a little extra heat boost for more procs when scaling Kuva Hek's insane base damage. The rest of the build is the exact same, with fast reloads from Prime Tactical Pump and Merciless so we can dump in more Altfires and kill the demo as soon as possible while refreshing more heavy duty heat procs. I would recommend running Narrow Barrel and Exec for this setup as you won't be sniping demos from a distance and would rather want to make sure all your bullets hit in your reticle. This is a higher effort build than Viral Hunter Munitions for disruption or just raw damage on a full strip setup, but the damage ceiling is much more higher since the damage comes from DOTs. For our primer, I'm once again still using Spectra Vandal for all the same damage reasons as last time, as high heat percentage and bane percentage is possible due to the disposition, since all heat stacks use the heat percentage, and bane percentage of the first heat proc applied, which will be done with Spectra. Essentially, Hek will be using 225% heat and 114.3% bane for scaling, as well as multiplying again by its own equipped bane. This time I'm running this setup on Nyx, which is perfect because she can cast Chaos to CC a massive area and keep enemies off your back as you focus on farming key drops and isolating the Demolists. Her Psychic Bolts will full strip them. Because her Bolt Strip isn't permanent and can be nullified by the demo pulses, I would recommend you prime the Spectra and Altfire the Hek first before casting bolts. This way you can time the bolts immediately after a pulse, so you get the full 6-second window before the armor strip is removed again by the next nullifier pulse. 6 seconds is more than enough to kill the demo when you already have applied the primer, shot Hek once, and also full stripped. This is the window where you just keep spamming Hex Altfire until it dies, or the strip is nullified and you can just recast Psychic Bolts again, but really that shouldn't be necessary. Because it takes time for Demolysts to reach you, you can easily set up the stacks of Galvanized Hell and Savvy with Heat and Inherit once you insert the Conduit keys. It only takes 4 kills after all of the multi-shot and only 2 kills for the gun CO. So let's take a quick look at how this plays out against Bombards. With 0 stacks, I instantly hit 600 to 800k heat DOTs from a single fire mode on a full strip. I can't even test how much damage it does once my galvanized mods are ups because they're just dying to the single shot damage itself. I presume it would be in the ballpark of 2 to 3 million. Actually, let's try doing the Trinity Well of Life trick again. So basically, I'm gonna go for max viral and more heat stacks before I switch to Hek. More viral stacks means more damage multipliers on my DOT, and more heat stacks is always a nice way to start things off. So I'm gonna armor strip this guy and then build up my galvanized stacks on the enemies on the left. Alright, now I have maxed out galvanized CO and multi-shot. We're gonna tag this bombard for full viral stacks, then switch to Hek and shoot. Wow, 3.4 million on the single shot. That's even higher than I expected. Alright, let's try this again with a full meg dump instead on the Altfire. Over 10 million, and we don't even have Roar yet, so now let's just try Roar for shits. So, well, I don't think you're gonna have any problems dealing with Demolysts if you bring Roar into the picture. 65 million. Yeah. For normal play, this weapon may not be the best for trash mob clear, but for single target nukes, you really can't beat that 4,000 base damage. This kind of raw damage is enough to kill the Demolysts in 4 ticks at level cap, even with their near 99% damage reduction, and you have more than enough time to reload and dump the Altfire again, meaning they will most likely die in just 2 to 3 ticks, or 2 to 3 seconds, when it takes another 6 seconds until the next nullifier pulse kicks in again. Imagine what it could do if I actually had heat as well on my Spectre Riven, or a Riven for Hek, or a higher strength Roar, or had a teammate cast Roar on me so I could cast Sickening Pulse instead. Now let's take a look at your last build today. You probably know how this will go because of the results of the Heat Inherit showcase. So we have stuff like Rubico as meta and Eidolon hunting with 187 base damage and some weird competitors like Velocitus or Salta, which while they're clunky are fully competitive on the damage category, both pushing 1000 base damage. But here we have Kuva Hek with nearly 4000 base damage, a 60% bonus, and its hit scan with respectable fall off. This means this thing hits over 10 times harder than a stock Rubico before you count for a combo, but hey, you can't really hit 10x combo, can you? If you aren't looking for speedruns, but a new casual gun just to delete limbs with, this is the way to go. We're running Prime Charge Shell as the main element into Radiation, then Blaze to add more into it for both base damage and heat. Of course we're going to include Prime Point Blank because there's no other way to proc the stacks of Merciless or the Galvanized mods in Eidolon hunting. Merciless is still useful for cutting down on the reload to just 0.8 seconds with Prime Tactical Pump though. Yes, we have free mod slots for reload because the damage is just that high. Critical Deceleration and Prime Ravage will be our crit sources for the pellet-based shotgun. It's okay to not hit 100% critical chance since the pellets will average the damage out, unlike shotgun slugs or single hit weapons like snipers. Hell's Chamber for the standard multi-shot and Vigilante armaments to add on more of it and complete the deal for some extra crit chance. I'm running a stock Volt with 243% strength. There's nothing special, no extra buffs except Arcane Rage that you can easily proc between limbs due to the pellet count of Hek and the standard Vigorous swap. I'm going to be testing against level 110 Dracar Manning Bombards today for this one because with 0 corrosive projections they near perfectly simulate a Terrorless Limb solo with no armor strip and 0 corrosive projections. Now we're going to head over, proc Arcane Rage and reload, cast Shock Trooper, caster Shield, proc Vig Swap and Altfire the thigh. Well, that was excessive and nearly killed the one behind him. Okay, let's try that again. Yeah, that's extremely reliable. Okay, how about if we single fire? Well, the single fire mode is enough to take off 50% of the limb, so this means the Altfire is doing 4 times that damage and is completely overkilling it. It's doing twice the damage required to kill the limb solo with no strips. You'll have absolutely no problems using this in hunts and squads or solos, especially with corrosive projections present or any kind of crit buffs. I did say in the past that Vastilok is similar to Old Redeemer because of the insanely good fall off, but it does have slightly less damage. But this thing, Kuva Hek's Altfire, is literally Old Redeemer. It completely overkills the limbs by a massive amount and doesn't need any extra kind of buffs at all. Just imagine what it can do once you bring Armor Strip into the picture, or Hero's Covenant crit buff, and or Aurora Eclipse. If you want a fun gun for easy mode hunts for casual, this is it. This is the new casual meta weapon for pubs. Kuva Hek isn't meta for normal gameplay because it's become abundantly clear that the meta currently heavily favors AoE nukes, especially with the advent of our new AoE weapons and the Sisters of Parvos update, with Tetra, Envoy, and Zar all taking the table from Brahma. But Hek shouldn't be ignored. It is a massive step up from its predecessors and completely annihilates anything you can throw at it. Whether you want some slower paced single target action with some extra punch through and steel path, or some elite mob nuking and disruption, or even just a new fancy toy for chill Eidolon hunting, Kuva Hek does manage to carve out a niche for itself. It has definitely managed to make this name and has basically unrivaled single target firepower, the literal strongest single target damage gun in the entire game currently by a long shot. Also, remember my heat Hek is only 46.6%. It can still do even more damage than that 65 million showcase with heat inherent if I maxed out to 60% for more base damage. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've done with covering the Tempest story and the Sisters of Parvos updates. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. I'm also preparing to get info out first once new war info drops. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.